Spoštovani gospod minister, spoštovani gostje, dobrodošli ob turističnem omizju Blejskega strateškega foruma, kjer se bomo pogovarjali o negotovosti kot edini stalnici. Prosimo za razumevanje, da bo dogodek v celoti potekal v angleščini zaradi velikega števila mednarodnih gostov. Najlepša hvala. That was a brief introduction, dear minister and distinguished guests, in the Slovenian language, the language we're so proud of, for which we have fought a very long time to preserve it and still fight, but we're of course extremely happy to conduct this roundtable in English. Slovenians are famous for being one of the best English speakers outside the Commonwealth and the United States, of course, too, so there will be no problem. We have to qualify for the lunch buffet starting at 12:20, so we would like to encourage a good discussion also with the audience in the latest part of the panel, but let me start with the introduction of your host, Ms. Maja Bulc, the director of the Slovenian Tourist Board, STO. Maja.
So, dear Minister Matjaž, dear colleagues, distinguished guests and speakers, I believe we are all delighted to be here at iconic Bled for the 8th Tourism Panel, organized by the Ministry of Development and Technology and Slovenian Tourist Board. One cannot be immune to the enchanting ambience of this place, often stated as one of the most beautiful places in the world. We have much to be happy about. Travel is back in a big way. With tourists regaining confidence in traveling again, industry numbers are in many destinations across Europe predicted to outpace even pre-pandemic levels. Travelers have embraced COVID as a new, manageable normal. They do, however, remain wary of what comes next, but they also understand the importance of seizing the moment. But if anything in this life is certain, if history, and especially the last 2.5 years, have taught us anything, it's that one cannot get too satisfied. After pandemic disruptions, we have found ourselves in a perfect storm of far-reaching factors such as Ukraine invasion, rising energy prices and food costs, supply chain challenges, labor shortages, and last but not least, the looming threat of recession. We seem to be living not only in times of uncertainty, the mantra we have been repeating in the last couple of years, but in the age of permanent crisis. Instability as the only constant is correctly the title of this year's panel. Let me structure my messages around three, the tourism industry most pressing matters. Firstly, we must accept how bad things are. I'm talking about climate emergency. We have accepted the fact that climate change is already affecting Europe in various forms, leading to higher temperatures, water shortages, forest fires, biodiversity loss, negative impact on people's health. But this year, there have been 4 times as many wildfires across the EU as the historical average. Researchers say that the current drought that Europe is experiencing could be the worst in 500 years. An intense drought is shrinking rivers across Europe, revealing stones carved centuries ago to give future generations a warning of hard times ahead. One of the so-called hunger stones on the banks of the Elbe River has revealed the warning, "If you see me, then cry." What a profound message. And this is only the beginning. It's not too late to take action and change our course. The window is, however, closing. The bad news is that climate action at the scale and speed necessary to protect not only the planet but also humanity is still not yet being displayed. Global media is this summer trying to get the message across that collapse is going to happen, but the good news is that they believe that this is the year people will start to notice. Secondly, it's not only the planet that is in distress, also the tourism industry is in dire straits. The previously mentioned perfect storm of multiple and complex health, political and economic factors have put enormous pressure onto the industry. This summer, we have all been witness to extensive and desperate staff shortages in all segments of the industry: restaurants, hotels, aviation, transportation, visitor attractions. Thousands of workers left the hospitality industry when international travel shut down during the pandemic. Many chose not to return, finding better paid employment and better working conditions. The opening times have been shortened, hotel rooms remain closed, the range of services cut, flights cancelled. Major European hotel chains are hiring workers without experience or even without a CV, hired in just 24 hours. Executives admit that years of underpaying staff have now come back as a boomerang. Increasing prices of raw resources represent a huge challenge to the added value of the industry, a prerequisite for everything: investments into new products, infrastructure, and people. But things are even much worse. With skyrocketing costs, the whole industry business operations are under threat. Global business travel spending is coming back at a slower pace than predicted. Furthermore, the pandemic has not only slowed down traveling, it has changed the way people travel. And on top of that, it also radically changed people. The way we live our lives, our passion, our preferences. And the list could go on. All this is threatening the industry, big time. Whereas previous crises have mostly led to a drop in traveling and overnights and were followed by rather quick and smooth rebounding, the present situation is far more complex, deep, and with lasting consequences. Therefore, thirdly, there is a strong need for new business models and more resilient industry, but also for coordinated EU response. As countries have taken measures to mitigate the impact of the pandemic crisis on tourism in the last 2 years, we need now to step up the sector's preparation for the economic and structural recovery. No question, we can only do it through enhancing environmental and social sustainability. But next to this, we will also have to make some changes in our business models. We can't be doing the same thing over and expect different results. So we will have to reimagine our role, purpose. We have to be bolder and more dedicated in developing innovative, unique solutions in product development, experience creation, and tourist engagement. We have to facilitate and enable initiatives that boldly go where few have been before. Understand the value of people and be ready to fight for talent, to find new and innovative ways to attract people into the industry and keep them. We will have to embrace the era of hybridity, where there is so much more than only black and white. We will have to use new technology to innovate and launch new products and to change the narrative from selling beautiful places using shiny tourism brochures language to communicating in a more socially responsible way to educate travelers to travel responsibly. We will simply have to find the right balance between the profit, planet, and people. So to conclude, we need a joint, coordinated response, but also the power of collective to move beyond the traditional growth-oriented mindset to a more inclusive, resilient, fair, sustainable, responsible, and climate-neutral tourism ecosystem. So these are all the topics and questions that we will tackle in the panel discussion with our distinguished guests. I'm looking forward to the debate and conclusions, and even more so, the action. Thank you very much for your attention, and have a very nice day.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Bulc. And now I'm happy to announce the Minister of Economic Development and Technology of the Republic of Slovenia, Mr. Matjaž.
Najprej, spoštovani, na začetku vendarle, turizem je tudi jezik, zato si bom dovolil, da vas vseeno pozdravim v mojem maternem jeziku, slovenščini, in vam rečem in izrekam dobrodošlico na Bledu in hvala lepa, ker ste prišli. Distinguished guests, panelists and participants, it's my great pleasure to welcome you to today's tourism panel. Thank you all of joining us today to discuss the future of international tourism. We are facing mounting economic, health, and geopolitical changes. We act in a very demanding and unstable period. In today's discussion, the main strengths will be laid on the impact of the current events in the travel industry and the guidelines for its recovery. Some highly competent experts will share the ideas and recommendations with us. Our main question is, how should we address the many global changes? And how will we cooperate in the future? This is very important. We are all aware of the high importance of tourism for national, European and global economy. This is where we really have to find the answer. In Slovenia, tourism, my dear, is a very important economic branch representing 10% of GDP. The last 2 years were very difficult for the tourism industry and all the tourism stakeholders. Tourism was one of the most COVID-affected branches, not only in Slovenia, but globally. National governments and the European Commission helped this sector a lot by adopting urgent measures, guidelines, as well as the resilience and recovery instruments. The results achieved in the first half of the years 2022 are positive, and we are optimistic about this year's tourism statistic. But you know what I mean but. The world is facing some other serious geopolitical and economic challenges today, such as military conflict, energetics crisis, climate change, raising cost of living, and so on and so on. And unfortunately, they have a negative impact of tourism as well. Because of this, Slovenian tourism adopt a new strategic document for the period of 7 years. Our vision is green and boutique destination with a small, this is important, carbon footprint and great value for everyone. With this, Slovenian tourism will get a chance to develop in a more sustainable way. My dear, I'm certain that we all agree that peace is a fundamental base for tourism development. We know that tourism is a bridge for building understanding. Peace is common understanding, is essential for recovery. All the conflict should be settled by diplomatic means. This could be one of the messages of today's tourism panel: diplomatic means and peace. Dear participants, I wish you a pleasant stay in Slovenia, many interesting experience and meetings with friendly Slovenian people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hahn. Now, an obvious question for all foreign visitors of today's panel is, do all important people in Slovenia have surnames with 3 characters? I mean, Hahn, Pak, and we're here in Bled, and the most famous athlete who comes from Bled is a multiple Olympic and world rowing champion, Istok Chop, I mean, C-O-P. And of course we have a mayor here whose surname is Pfeiffer, and you can also write it with 3 characters, 5-A-R. But you will see Slovenia is a small country with a great variety also of surnames, and you will hear that also in the panel. But before that, we're really happy to announce 2 presentations of very famous international guests. And the first is Ms. Zorica Urošević, the Executive Director of the United Nations World Tourism Organization, who will have a presentation on the state of tourism in the world in these troubled times. So, Ms. Urošević, you're really invited to take the floor.
Dobro jutro. Ja neću moći da pričam celu prezentaciju naš jezik, ali drago mi je da sam tu. Ministar, Matjaž, gospođo Pak, dear friends and colleagues. Thank you first for inviting the World Tourism Organization to be part of this amazing conversation. Yesterday was a very inspirational listening and debate and exchange. So today we are going to look what is the place of tourism in the future of the world, and I can say in the future for people, the planet, and our prosperity. But as well as the minister said, peaceful societies. I think this we have to understand very well. Now, today we are going to speak about a sector which is the 3rd export earning category in the world after fuel and chemicals. This is in 2019. The sector is a complex ecosystem of economic activities, but most of them led by people and for people. So tourism futures, what they are, and how can we achieve the transformation for inclusive societies and prosperous economies while preserving the earth that sustains us? That's going to be our try to look into. So that's our need, maybe. Yes. Today we are facing a polycrisis. A polycrisis, and I'm very glad, I'm not going to stay long on those slides because I think that this was really addressed very well by our friend Ms. Pak. The pandemic has brought a lot of disruption, but it has as well done one amazing achievement in positioning the sector and the importance of the tech sector for our economies and societies everywhere, not only in developing countries, but as well in our own countries, in Europe, for example. Climate threat, absolutely. We see how much we depend on climate and how much now, today, energy dependency is putting a burden on how we can be more competitive for the tourism sector because cost of operation are increasing. And the military aggression against Ukraine, which has caused a lot of disruption, and it's going to impact globally our economies, purchasing power, trends, choices for travel or not.
Now, the challenge and the economic downturn, including the food crisis, the energy independency, job losses, loss of confidence of markets, but as well human capital shortage, because we have seen that during the crisis, many people have moved in other sectors. They have found themselves happy to work with decent work hours and a decent pay. And I think this, when it comes to policy making and to the new business model, we need to address it. We might raise salaries. We might raise, if not salaries, social benefits. We need to be creative. So I think that environmental and social governance should be part of the future of what we are building for tomorrow. Now, on the opportunities, we know that booking of flights and hotels are upswing. The demand has been above expectations from the beginning of the year and this summer. Prices have grown. Prices of travel has as well increased. But despite all of this, the demand has increased as well. So basically, we are at the turning point where we need to match supply and demand in a manner that is going to be satisfactory for the customer, but as well for the businesses. And then this has a huge impact on tourism governance. At the government level, restructuring of where tourism fits is happening everywhere. But as well, on the global level, we as a UN organization, among our sister agency, the sector is growing recognition and reputation. And that as well is a great opportunity which we as an intergovernmental organization want our members to benefit, and consequently as well the private sector, because we are one of the only organizations that is a UN organization that deals with an economic sector. So that's quite particular. Now, what have we done? Sorry, pictures are small, but intentions are big, and support has been big as well. Now, we have, from the inception of the crisis, actually on the 9th of March 2020, Secretary General Urošević was in Geneva, and I was at that time in charge of our liaison office there. We met Dr. Tedros, which announced the next day the pandemic. Now, we were very well prepared, anticipating on what was coming up. So the collaboration with our sister agency, especially the World Health Organization and the International Civil Aviation Organization, and many other partners, I will not want to name another one because I will miss and I will put contrariety to the people that have not been named. But we have put together a Global Tourism Crisis Committee which has been driving UNWTO support to the sector for recovery and now as well for resilience and for the future to transform tourism. So data and intelligence have been at the forefront of the need of everyone, understanding what's going on, understanding how the neighbors are doing, and understanding the trends as they come. The creation of tools which everybody was having access to, or has access to even today, has been instrumental in everybody being able to monitor. We have as well seen an increase of private sector sharing the data, which never happened before. Now everybody saw the value of sharing. That as well is a change in the way we work now. On the policy and the governance as well, I think that we have produced and guided the sector and countries in re-look at their tourism scenario or tourism model. And when it comes to direct technical assistance, our methodologies have been used and by many other implementing partners and donors, and multilateral donors in particular. Now, on the transformation and the future, I think that we are going to address it in the few coming slides. Now, I would share with you, because I was asked to do so, the trends. Now, as I said, our big and one of our strong value proposition is the capacity to have a strong intelligence in policy and research when it comes to data monitoring. That is a key. We have seen, and you all know those graphs, I'm sure that you have seen them many times because we have done many Zooms, many interactive sessions online, and now today really it's a pleasure to see all of you. The crisis has been nothing to compare to the crisis in 2009. And the deep dive of the drop from 1.5 million to 400 million has brought us to 30 years back as tourism was. But we can see as well that tourism is really showing resilience, and we are picking up again. Now, overall impact on international tourists, as I said, 1.4 billion to 429 million in 21. Things are evolving very well, changing in 2022. We will see that later. In exports, the loss has not been as dramatic as international arrivals because countries have adapted, jobs had to be filled, livelihood had to be preserved. So many countries have developed, I can say, domestic tourism to compensate the international movement because it was not possible with the protocols in place. So basically, we have seen that the sector has been very reactive, but however, a lot of losses. And the most remarkable is, remarkable in the negative sense, 1.9 trillion loss in revenue, which have been impacting tourism direct GDP globally. Tourism global GDP was 4% of world GDP. Now, when it comes to international arrivals, we see that regions, I think it's important that we place ourselves among the regions because our markets are coming from everywhere. And you all know that, for example, the Asian market has been at a total standstill. So we had to reinvent the offer and the attractiveness of destinations because the protocols in place and the lockdowns in Asia have been severely impacting all the markets in Europe. And Europe, because of the vaccination rate and because of the capacity to rebound in the support of SMEs and industry and, of course, jobs, has been the fastest to recover. Now, when it comes to international arrivals, I mean, this, the red is in January to May. This is our July barometer. It's only minus 35%. We know that concerning the summer season, many countries have now reached the point of 2019, and some have even gone above in Europe. So that is an extremely important message of hope, but we need to be very cautious because the poly-crisis and the need to be very cautious because the rapid than in other destinations now. Asia and Pacific have only recovered 10%, so we hope that those markets are going to open and people to come to travel again. Now, as you know, as I was explaining our intelligence and market, we have a barometer which everybody knows that is issued 4 times a year plus one edition at the beginning of the year, which gives an overview of the year performance. We have about 350 tourism experts in all over the world, public sector and private sector people identify for their competence and their capacity to provide an insight. The confidence index only 6 months ago was absolutely not at the level of where we are today. And I think that many have been anticipating that slow recovery for Europe, for example, would be only in 2023-24. And now we see that that perception has changed. Now we see that above 5 to 6% are looking at 22 levels, and 23 and 24, that was the anticipated forecast. Now, when it comes to international arrivals, the world is performing extremely well. We know that, and you all know, island destinations have been suffering the most because their high dependency on tourism, some of them, 70% of the GDP is tourism, have been extremely affected with very little means to support industries and livelihoods in the same time, not the same capacity as developed countries such as in the EU, for example. So the creativity and the new governance models have emerged, like led by the head of state, for example. I always like to mention Dominican Republic because I think it is a country that has been incredibly rebounding, outperforming today more than it was in 2019 with an incredible flow of new investments. So the tourism governance is really a key in how to drive the rebound, the transformation of the sector for being more inclusive to benefit more societies and, of course, the economy. So, doesn't want? Maybe I do that. It's blocked, sorry. Yes, I wanted to show Europe. Next. No. Okay, thank you so much. So in Europe, we can see that the graph shows us that the rebound has been much higher. And of course, this is all due to the high level of vaccination and the lifting of travel restrictions. Now, when it comes to travel restrictions, today 72 countries have no travel restrictions at all. And that is quite remarkable. Those countries represent 47% of the global market share of the tourism rebound. So 72 countries represent almost half of the numbers of tourism arrivals today in the period from January to 25th of August. We took it the latest. 11th of August, sorry. So that is as well showing that close monitoring of measures and protocols is very important, of course, as well as the level of vaccination. Now, I just wanted to have for us to have a deep dive and a look on what are the travel behaviors today. Now, people are getting closer and for a longer stay. This is why tourism receipts have not suffered as much as number of arrivals. And people like, for example, even to go by car today. And this is why I think Slovenia has benefited immensely during the season, because many customers are just coming from another country in Europe. Getaway, nature, rural tourism, and road trips have emerged. That is why I can say you are very well placed here, and many destinations in Europe are completely revitalizing the rural sector. More responsible, people are more demanding. We have all seen that we can do anything to travel. You remember, I mean, we all had masks from the moment we leave the house to the moment we arrive in our room, if we can get a room, or if we can travel in a hotel. So basically, this flexibility and adaptation that people have shown has impacted on the way and the perception we have on the responsibility that we have when we travel. So the demand for more responsible products is there. And then new concerns. People want to be feeling safe and they want more flexibility on the cancellation policy. I just want to mention as well a very key work that has been achieved by the organization, and I think Alessandra had a lot to do in that, is the Global Code for the Protection of Tourists, which is now adopted by many countries, which is now a regulatory framework for companies to engage, and of course for countries to support, because flexibility in the purchase is very important to be protected. Now, what is the outlook for the future? Lifting COVID travel restriction and opening in Asia. This is going to be on the positive side. The US-Euro exchange rate, I think that many European destinations have really heavily benefited from the advantageous exchange rate from the US. Pent-up demand and household savings, even though I can say there is a chill there, because it's not evident that people are going to make this decision to travel, looking at what the economic downturn is going to bring us. And as well, we have seen an incredible investors' confidence
In the first quarter, we have seen a strong hotel investment activity surpassing the 2019 by 0.5%. Now, as I said earlier, on the negative and on the challenges, the workforce shortage and operational challenges, this is everywhere. A slowdown in economic growth and risk recession in key European markets. Record high inflation. Some countries are above 8, 9 in Europe. Hike in interest rates and squeezing living conditions. So the uncertainty can generate wait-and-see attitude, and this is the risk we need to understand. Now, I will address 4 or 5 points on what we see for the future and how we can address it and how the organization is leading that work and in which we're really happy that all of you engage. Tourism transformation. I think that the acceleration to green and inclusive growth is really one key question. We need to start from the beginning. If we want to measure growth and if we want to measure sustainability, we need to have the instruments for. And the Measuring Sustainable Tourism Framework, a statistical framework that UNWTO is leading, it's an initiative that is in the making. Many of the partners around the room here are part of that work. Is going to be adopted, hopefully, by the UN Statistical Commission in about a year or two. And that is going to give a framework and I can say harmonized methodology for measuring the economic, social, and environmental impact of tourism for the economies and the societies. So that is a key work in which governments are engaged, are going to lobby with the UN, and I know that Slovenia is very active. The Minister of Foreign Affairs yesterday was explaining how much ambition Slovenia has to be really an active partner of the UN. Now, there is one other very important flagship drive and initiative called One Planet Network for Sustainable Tourism. This is, again, a UN-led initiative with the United Nations Environment Programme, but with a lot of partners. This is going to run for the next 10 years as, I can say, the main drive of an integrated approach to sustainability. The future, as we said, needs to address climate action. And the roadmap for the climate action has been launched in Glasgow last year with the Glasgow Declaration on Climate Action. More than 700 signatories so far, government, private sector, companies, but as well CSO, civil society organization, networks, and associations. Then the Global Tourism Plastic Initiative, because we need to look at the oceans, because the oceans are a vital lung for carbon sequestration, but as well for opportunities to develop tourism. 40% of the world tourism is happening in coastal area. And the global roadmap on food waste reduction as well, I think that when we speak about the food crisis, we have to look as well at different models on how we serve food in the hotel industry. So our call to action is to align, enable, and multiply. So I invite you very much to explore more on our website, and we are there to respond to any questions further down the line if you're interested. Now, tourism is a high priority sector in the new global strategy on sustainable consumption and production. This One Planet program is based on SCP. It's the Sustainable Development Goal 12, which explicitly mention tourism, such as 8 on economic development and 14 on the life above the sea. Now, this is just a snapshot. I know it's written small, but the presentation is going to be available, I think, after. So this is our roadmap to COP27. We are going to produce a number of technical paper, policy paper, and we're going to hold climate talks for government and private sector to understand well how we can act and what we should do and integrate in our business model or policies to be taking advantage of climate action for reducing, for creating sustainability and building competitiveness. Now, innovation is at the forefront of the future. UNWTO has been proven to be extremely active in that field in scaling up innovation. We have a number of challenges, I'm sure many of you know about it, and we are really driving that agenda globally, but as well in the UN. And this year we are transforming those challenges into much more deep dive, I can say capacity building. We are offering Digital Futures for SMEs program in partnership with technology partners, assessing your readiness in taking full advantage of the digitalization and providing support and training. We have these tourism tech adventures that are really, can be global, regional, thematic, or national. Startup competition, same, can be global, national. We have one currently running, is Tourism Awake, is on SDGs. Innovation challenges as well, and many activities which are currently hosted in our regional office for the Middle East. Now, this is a little bit the global roadmap when it comes to the UN sphere and the global agenda and where tourism fits. We have a number of partners we work with because we see the value. One of them is the ETC. I think Mr. Santander here is going to enlighten us on the work you do, but I think that this is certainly one of the most trusted partners we have when it comes to Europe, besides the World Economic Forum, the OECD, and other global partners. And during the G20 this year in Indonesia, on the 26th of September, tourism ministers are going to meet from the G20 countries and beyond, and we are going to look and have a deep dive on understanding what government should do for SMEs, opportunities and challenges, and how we need to support enterprises, because these are vital actors of the sector. Without tourism SMEs, there is no tourism. 80% actually of tourism is made of SMEs. And of course, COP27, where we are going to unveil and continue our advocacy effort and exchanges moving forward in the climate action sphere. Now, I just wanted to share with you that for the first time in history, that tourism is part of the global agenda. We were in New York at the UN General Assembly Hall, which many of us have seen so many times, because since the Ukraine crisis hit, there has been so many votes in that, I can say, historical room. UNWTO has organized a high-level thematic debate for an entire day with the President of the General Assembly. Our intention is to continue and to try to have a momentum every year at the UN General Assembly. I think this is only bringing an amazing visibility and opportunity for member states of the UN to understand and to recognize the importance of the sector. And here, I think, as I said earlier, successful destinations which have recovered and which are on the path to transformation have been the ones that have been the most agile in changing the governance pattern. And I think that, as I just mentioned, the UN General Assembly and UNWTO role is really to be the catalyst of that change, spreading and sharing the best business model, the best policy spheres, and the best governance models among its member states, and of course, involving the private sector. Now, we are UN, but we are strongly working with European Union, and again, our director for the Europe region, Alessandra Priante, is driving that agenda, and she's going to be with us later on the panel. And the contribution we have made on the transition pathway for tourism was published in 2022, and maybe Slovenia can make another push when it comes to the next phase, that tourism is, UNWTO is more recognized to the contribution we are making to the EU, because in the UN, we are recognized. In the EU, not always. We are coming through the door, but so this is a political call, maybe not concerning everyone, but I think the message can pass through and other countries present. And the ETC UNWTO dashboard, I take it as a flagship, but there's many more and much more that we do with ETC. Coordination in strategic alliances, I can say, I spoke about it with UN entities and beyond. And the creation and the contribution to the OECD blueprint and the WEF Tourism Development Index. Now, with the G20, I just explained, we're going to have resilience building for SMEs and global UN standard setting with the measuring sustainable tourism and the International Code for the Protection of Tourists. This is just a recap on what is ahead of us. as well on the UNWTO Academy, scaling up tourism education, 360-degree footprint, the Global Center for Tourism and Rural Development, and building an innovative finance architecture, our upcoming integration of the work of our affiliate members. If we have affiliate members here, I think that the program of work is quite intense. Now, again, from the beginning to the end, I think that what we want to discuss today is really how we can achieve a tourism transformation. And I think that we said it already, but I think investing in people is #1 priority. Human capital and education, foster sustainable and green transition, boost investment, enhance competitiveness, and scale up innovation. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Urošević. So it's really good to have all representatives of major global stakeholders in tourism here, including UNWTO. Mrs. Urošević started her presentation in Serbian, which is a closely connected language, and we know how big impact the Serbians had on, let's say, the world, especially Serbian experts like Mr. Urošević or Nikola Tesla, for example, who actually started his career in Slovenia, in Maribor. It made him rethink a little bit his career, and he was so successful then. And of course, don't forget that the inventor of the famous Bled cream cake is actually a Serbian expert, Istvan Lukačević, in the 50s, who came from Serbia, from northern Serbia, where there's a big Hungarian minority, and he invented the cream cake. And because the languages are connected, Serbian and Slovenian, he actually kept his secret notes in Hungarian because he was partly of Hungarian origin. So the cream cake recipe was quite secret for some time, but now we know it and we're happy for it. Our next speaker with another interesting presentation, which will then open the panel, is Mr. Luís Araujo from the European Travel Commission. He's the president of the ETC and also the CEO of Turismo de Portugal. So there will be a European view with the beautiful Portuguese touch, and everybody loves Portugal, including Slovenia. So, Mr. Araujo, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Igor. Well, first of all, thank you to the Minister of Economy. It's my 3rd time in Slovenia in just 1 year. So someone in Portugal is starting to think bad things about me, or at least that I have a second family here, which I don't. But it's wonderful to be here, and it's beautiful to be here in Bled and to share with you the challenges of the future. Thank you, Maja, for the invitation once again. It's so good to work with the Slovenian Tourism Board, and for us, and I have to tell you this, it's a role model in terms of working sustainability issues and working destinations. So thank you, and it's wonderful to be here. So, moving forward, instability is the only constant. Instability is a very negative word, and we all know what is happening in the world. We all know that we have huge challenges ahead. But I'm going to talk about what we can do, all of us, collectively, the ones inside this room or independently. Because some things are so high level, so out in the sky, that we have to focus on what we can do. And I brought you a few ideas of what we think in Portugal, inside the European Travel Commission, of what we can do, private sector, public sector, all together. So I changed, and of course, I've followed the right Heraclitus sentence, change is the only constant. And I'm going to talk about change, how things are changing, but also how we have to change in order to address those challenges. And sometimes that's the most difficult part. We always ask someone to change, we forget ourselves. We also have to change. And I bring you a few examples. The first one is very clear, talking about change, nothing better than age. 50 years later, we change. And this is real, because change happens every day. So we better address them. And we had a few examples these past 2 years of changes. After growing immensely, every destination in Europe was growing. In Portugal, just to give you an example, we grew 60%, 60, our revenues in just 4 years. We hit a record of 27 million guests we never had. And we diversified markets as we never diversified, especially from long-haul destinations. This was 2019, and we thought we were living, all of us, Slovenia also, we thought we were living the best time of our years. But things changed once again. And there was a big example of how things change and how we adapted to that change. When we see these, a few examples of how we changed the way we looked for tourists in terms of segments, talking to digital nomads, to long stays, to long-haul destinations that searched for a place to spend their holidays, or a month or 2 or 3 or 4 of getting away of what was happening in our country, although this was happening in the entire world. And to tell you the truth, we were the most affected because we were not able to deal with this change. And we were not able to pass the message that our sector was important. But we changed. And I brought you a few examples. Talking to our internal market, something that we had never done, at least in Portugal. We left the internal market because we always thought that it was for granted. Well, it isn't. And it was a wonderful surprise. And I think you have the same here in Slovenia. Or talking to our very close neighbors, as many of these countries did. So this was also, and we were able to do this change. So we will surely be able to address the changes and the challenges that I'm bringing a little bit later. Another example of our country. We changed so much that we've decided to take the boldest decision ever, which was saying, this is not the time to come to our country. So we told everyone this. Hopefully. There was a video here? No? Yes.
Life is whatever we make it. The traveler is the journey. What we see is not what we see, but who we are. The world. What is the world, oh my love? The garden of my verses, all in blue. Nothing gives the idea of the constancy of character, like the firmness of walking through seas men never sailed before. The end of one journey is simply the start of another. You have to see what you missed the first time. Let's read Portugal.
Change. This was one of the biggest challenges we had in Turismo of Portugal. Telling someone, and we've been telling everyone, like all of us, come, visit us, join us, experience us. This was the time to tell them, just stay home and read about us. And it's an example, as many, and I'm sure many of you have examples like this in your enterprise, in your business, in your organization, of this kind of situations. But I'm going directly to the challenges. If the pointer also, now I know I have to point here. So preparing for change. The good news, it only depends on us. The bad news, sometimes we don't have the help we need. And this is really important. Because over these 2 years, we heard things like, oh, tourism is really important for any destination, any country. Inside ETC, we heard this everywhere. It's important. It contributes to our GDP. Long promises of long-lived tourism after COVID, because we need tourism. What's new? Things came back, we're going back to the normal, and we forget. And we need support, financial support from governments, from the European Commission, for small and very small enterprises in any country inside Europe. And this has to be said every day to every government, to every institution, because things haven't stopped. And we need help for the challenges that we have for the future. And preparing for the change, I have 5 big changes. We have to take the lead and act. We're always seen like this, either the victims or the villains of this. Tourism is the big cause for what's happening in the world, right? So we always hear we're the biggest threat for climate change, we don't change, we don't take decisions. So we have to take things differently. And thank God we have some very good examples of what is happening inside Europe about this. Tourism on an organizational level and destination management is changing. And many of these programs are wonderful examples, but they're worth nothing if the private sector doesn't align with this, if each people doesn't align with this, if any consumer or tourist doesn't think this is important, because all this effort will just bring us to the other slides. We will keep being the victims of what's happening in the world, or the villains of what's happening in the world. And we don't want to be that. So I would say this is the biggest challenge that we have in front of us. The second one is how to grow our community. And when I talk about growing our community, I'm talking about this. We're getting old. In 30 years, we will have almost half of the European population over 55 years. What used to be, we used to have in 2000, 4 people working for 1 retired people. By 2050, we will have 2 people working for 1 retired people. This is not acceptable. And we have to talk about this because our sector is affected by this. And how do we deal with this? Well, 3 options. Migration. We have so many people that want to come to Europe. Let's embrace them. Let's give them training. Let's help them, include them in our societies. We have so many refugees camps. Who wants to open a hotel school inside a refugee camp and bring people to our countries? We have to talk about this and discuss this. And these are the challenges that we have to think differently in order to change. The second one, EU visa policy. We will have a new system, a new visa policy system inside Europe. I hope it will be for the best. We cannot live closed anymore. And if we don't think about this, trust me, by 2050 it will be too late. The third thing to grow our community has to do with our own community, our sector. And we have to attract the ones that have left. We had 1.2 million people leaving the sector inside Europe, 1.2 million. And they didn't left because they found something better. Well, some of them did. They left because they were frustrated, because they didn't have the right salary or the right career plan or the right benefits or the right attention that they needed. And we need to think this in a complete different way in order to attract and keep those who work for us. So growing our community is the second big change. The third one is our people, and we don't take care of our people. I'm sorry to say this. I have a slide about what's the employment in tourism inside the European Union, and you see 58% of people employed in tourism are women. All economic activities is 46%, so we are a female activity. But I have a challenge also for that. 29% are in job for less than 2 years, 23% against 19% in part-time, 18% against 17% in lower education. Give you the example of Portugal. 60% of our working staff, and we're talking about 350,000 people, has minimum basic teaching, 60%. 60%. Basic teaching means 9 years of scholarship. It's not new to Portugal. I'm sure that many of European countries have the same. So we have to change this. And second, foreign citizens, 13 against 8, but a huge opportunity, young people, 9% against 7% in other economic activities. This is where we should focus. And we have some wonderful news from the European Union. For the first time, tourism was considered one of the industries to have a transition pathway. The first transition pathway, yes, we will have funding. Once again, the funding has to reach everyone. The funding has to reach every activity inside tourism. It's not just hotels that want to be built in big destinations. It's every small enterprise that is in our country. So we need also trust from that side. And the second, the Pact for Skills. Finally, we will have a great pact and funding also to support skills and support training in our sector. So what can we do? Once again, and I'm happy to be part of a big team like the one below on the right side in Portugal, and from the European Commission on the left side, that is focused on these. And although most of our organizations deal with promotion, we're pretty much changing our mindset and thinking that sometimes it's better to think on these other things because they will impact our promotion. And in order to do this, I bring you 4 ideas. The first one, support diversity. It's not possible to have 58% of women working in the sector, but then their salaries, the average salary is 10 to 20% lower than those salaries of the men. Why? Because most of the high-level hierarchy of our businesses, organizations, governments related with tourism are occupied by men. This has to change. Win-win training. We often focus on training as something that is good for our enterprise, that will help us be more profitable or more efficient. Wrong. We have to think of training as something that is good for our employee. And this assessment, this evaluation has to be done by every organization, every enterprise, every businessman. Third, add value. We don't add value to our employees, to our workers, and we always think of adding value to our customers. We forget sometimes that if we don't do that, we will hardly retain those who work for us. And the fourth one, I'm sure, loyalty programs, every company has one. And we've developed the most sophisticated loyalty programs and cards and models to attract and retain consumers. Well, it's time to create a loyalty program for our workers, for those who work for us. So if we do this, maybe we will retain and grow our community, but also take care of ours very clearly. The fourth point is this: we have to innovate and create. And innovation is important, yes, but the only way we can have innovation if we feel these 3 items. It has to be data-based, sustainability-driven, and human-centered. If innovation and creativity is not human-centered, it's not worth it. And sometimes we focus on technology and on digital just for the sake, once again, of on the operational side. So this is something that for us it's really important, because when we think about innovation and when we think about creativity, we have to challenge ourselves too. The way we promote our countries, the way we promote our enterprises. Who do we talk to? Where do we go to do promotion? Should we be doing the same things we've done over the past years? I think it's better to change, or at least think of some changes. The final challenge is this. And yesterday it was amazing to hear, I will never pronounce the name, Žižek. Good. It was amazing to hear him and to listen to him. Because when we think about this, the values of European Union, these are our values. The first picture was taken 50 years ago in the island of Madeira. I was brought up in a place that is one of the most touristic destinations in Portugal and maybe in the world. And 50 years ago, it was very different, of course. But it was a huge destination. We are used to live with other people, with other nationalities. Many of my parents' friends, they met them at the restaurant or in the street because they needed help, and they helped them. This is what the European Union means. And if you look at this, it's exactly the same as our values, as our purpose, as an activity. So there is no doubt whatsoever that tourism has a role to play in this. So if we have a role to play, if we are an activity that supports so many jobs and helps so many people to get together inside our country or outside our country, then we have a bigger mission than the one we are discussing here or the one that we are doing in our destination or in our company. I think this is the right moment to say, mostly because we're living a big threat to this. And yesterday was a big example on how this is threatening. We're seeing movements rising everywhere in Europe. For the first time in Portugal, we have the extreme right as the third biggest party in our country. And they are sitting in the parliament. And I grew up in an island where I was used to talk to anyone, to accept everyone, to think freely and speak freely, and love whoever I wanted. So if we don't accept this, and if we don't think this is the biggest threat to our activity, but this is also the biggest challenge that we can support, we won't be successful in these changes. And I leave you with a sentence from Arthur C. Clarke, because sometimes we focus on this superior science and we forget that we have some inferior morals inside of us that we have to improve. If we don't balance this, then we will have instability and we will be self-destroyed. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Araujo. Of course, we also love Portuguese literature, and we love the Portuguese language because it's one of the few languages, actually, Portuguese and Spain, which bring Slovenia a little bit higher on the alphabet order, because they say Slovenia. So we always have to wait for so long till we get to the S at the Olympic Games opening, for example. So thank you, Portugal and Spain too. So, but it was anyway a really fantastic introduction for what we will discuss in the upcoming hour. I'm really happy to announce our panelists. Ladies first, Professor Alessandra Priante, the Director of the Regional Department for Europe at the UNWTO. An applause. Then Ms. Violeta Bulc, 4 characters, founder and curator of Eco-Civilization, but of course the former commissioner for mobility and transport in the European Commission. Then from the United States, the president and the CEO of the United States Tour Operators Association, Mr. Terry Dale. Then, of course, Mr. Eric Drésin, the Secretary General of the European Travel Agents and Tour Operators Association. Welcome, Mr. Drésin. And last but not least, Mr. Matevž Frangež, the State Secretary at the Ministry of Economic Development and Technology of the Republic of Slovenia. I have to mention that Mr. Frangež, yes, of course, an applause, has another meeting starting at 12, so he will probably leave early before we get to the questions from the audience. So that's why I start with you, Mr. Frangež. We had 2 really fantastic presentations with a lot, let's say, suggestions how to do it in the future. But of course, we have to, and that would be our first topic, action recovery in the COVID-19 follow-up, and we don't know what's coming actually in autumn. So what's the Slovenian government doing right now to make this recovery successful and to prepare for new challenges which we're facing now? War, energy crisis, climate crisis, which is an eternal crisis. So what are you doing right now? And please take into account that you have to be a little bit closer to the microphone because we're live streaming this too. So I would like also the international audience to hear that.
Thank you, Mr. Bergant, for your difficult question. But
this
I'll
is
reflect
to ask a politician difficult questions.
To both of the presentations because I think both showed excellent roadmap. First, Mrs. Urošević, I think it's very data-driven and also reflects on the consumer behavior. And here's the first good news for the Slovenian tourism. If you look what people are demanding in the post-COVID time, yes, we fit the picture perfectly. And second, thank you for the inspiration of your presentation, Mr. Araujo. And we are doing exactly that. Well, it is very well structured in 5 steps, but I would say that during COVID, Slovenian state intervened massively to help the tourism sector. Second, we are now in the middle of a big investment process. First, 70 million euros of grants for the restructuring of our mountain centers, ski centers, to be able to offer 365 days of outdoor activities for their guests.
Even winter without snow?
Even winter without snow. Okay. However, we count on it, okay? Plus, we are just before releasing another massive tender of 70 million to help refurbish or build new capacities for guests. This is what I learned from Mrs. Araujo presentation. We have to invest. We have to help small and medium-sized businesses to overcome the threats we face. But let me be very clear. I think that in this decade, we have to learn to live with all the uncertainties that we will face the culmination effect of different crises from the pandemic to the energy sector, and we can foresee another crisis in the years to come. But what is essential that we build flexible models that, for example, for Slovenia as a country, no matter how it shakes, we have to be stable in our flexibility. But for this flexibility, we have to invest in people, we have to improve our attitude toward the environment, toward society, and so on, to build a more robust model that will live through the future crisis.
But we'll speak about people a bit later. I would like to hear from Mr. Dale the perspective from the United States. How do you see the impact of, let's say, COVID crisis to tourism in the States? And of course, how do you see Europe from your perspective? Europe, which is facing a terrible war in Ukraine after the Russian aggression. Does this also affect U.S. tourism, especially tourists who come to Europe, and they have returned? We see them.
Well, that's a big question. And I almost feel like I need to stand up to address it, but I'll do my best.
You're free to do it.
I'll do my best from my chair here. And let me just say, this is my first real visit to Slovenia. what took me so long? Because in the 24 hours, or I actually think it's been less than that, I am so amazed and so in love. And it's that passion that you get from people who call this country home. And that's critical. So I am so happy to be here. I forgot your question, but anyway. So I know it's something like COVID.
Your answer is far better than my question, but so go on.
So COVID and the war. I am pretty darn bullish about the U.S. traveler right now, even though we see inflation at record levels. But what we've learned is, through COVID, people place a higher value on travel. So they're willing to forego X, whatever X might be, so that they can travel. So I think and believe that the future for Slovenia and Europe is pretty darn healthy and optimistic. Now, has 2022 materialized in the way that my members had hoped? Not quite. Not quite. But it's better than, obviously, we've gone through the last couple of years. 2023, we expect and anticipate will meet 2019, which tells us that the U.S. traveler is going there. And just so everyone in this room understands, Europe is everything to at least our members. So when we do an annual survey of where are your customers going, top 20, 15, 14, 16, I mean, it varies a little year by year, but the vast majority are going to Europe. And that is not going to change. And I think in times of challenges like we are operating in today and yesterday and will in the future, Europe is our bread and butter. And Europe is where we want to go and we will go. So I don't know whether that answered your question, but COVID is not impacting our travel experiences and expectations today like it did, obviously.
Your answer was great. Of course, the relation between euro and dollar is somehow favorable for guests from the United States.
Totally.
This could change, of course.
It could, but I'm not an expert on those fluctuations in currency exchanges. But I'll just go back to my premise. Regardless of those fluctuations, Americans are going to travel, and they're going to travel to Europe.
That's good news, and you're always welcome.
You didn't pay me to say that.
No.
Okay.
Not yet.
Not yet.
So Mr. Drésin, how do you see it from the European point of view, especially because we know that travel agencies have suffered tremendously in last year. So is the recovery occurring right now? How do you see the situation right now? Was the response from the industry, let's say, appropriate?
Okay. I mean, we'll be short on the sufferings of the industry because everybody has been affected basically the same way. The recovery is higher as expected. Yet we've seen that the disturbances in the whole ecosystem that has an impact today, namely airports and airlines issues. I mean, you have all heard all the shortcomings when people wanted to travel to your destinations, to your countries from Northern Europe. And this has had a huge impact on the travel within Europe. We estimate about 20 impact on the revenue of travel agents and tour operators by 20% in July and August. So it's tremendous, tremendously high. The idea is that we're happy about the way things are developing, but there's a lot of things that we need to recover from. We have, as the two first speakers mentioned, a labor shortage, which is a big issue. was just looking at some figures before coming. In France, for instance, half of the travel agent and tour operators have at least 2 or 3 open positions in their company. Remember that when you talk about online travel agents, these are big companies, but many of the travel agents and tour operators are small-scale SMEs, so this is a huge impact. So the perspective today is not that easy. On top, and I want to rebound on what Terry said, we always focused on the European market. Yes, we can travel within Europe. And we have many beautiful destinations as Bled or Portugal.
But and the surroundings of Bled, which is called Slovenia.
I've heard about that one too. But we not there as regard international travel. USA is, I think, before the pandemic, it was about, for European travel advisors, 14 million people traveling to US per year, equivalent to 30 billion euros. We estimate this year at an average 9 to 10 million people traveling. So you see that there is still a huge gap. And this is where we need to work on the coming years, because it's where the margins for the industries are.
Mm-hmm. So we'll speak about the perspectives and then solutions later on. Mrs. Priante, you announced really, let's say, bold statements from you here today, especially when it comes to, let's say, the shortage of I wouldn't say labor force, but people working in the industry. It's a big issue. I don't know if this is also, Mr. Dale, a big issue in the United States. It is?
Huge.
Okay. So we share the problem. So I mean, what have we done wrong before the pandemic and all the crisis, and what can we do right now to attract more people to work in the industry? We saw some solutions, but how to do it on a short term, because countries even within Europe are actually virtually fighting for stuff to be attracted.
First of all, let me start with a bold statement.
Okay.
I love you. You're amazing as a moderator. Seriously.
I mean, it's only the beginning of the moderation. So, I mean,
I have to remember that line. So every panel that I'm on, I'm going to start with, I love you. I love you. And hence, the rest of it is a piece of cake.
We could just set a new trend, international
That's why
trend.
they came to Slovenia, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Slovenia has love in its name. That's where you learn about love.
Thank you. And because volleyball is one of the very special sports of Slovenia, she immediately got my ball and slammed it, because that's what I wanted to come to. So thank you for that. That was amazing, and it wasn't planned. It wasn't scripted.
No.
So the other second bold statement I want to make, and this is a kind invitation to the land around Bled called Slovenia, to really, you be bold. Bled Strategic Forum has to be the new Davos for tourism. What happens in Bled politically in this time of the year, every single year, has an impact that people remember. Yesterday was dramatically unforgettable. Not just because of the Ukraine element, it's because how people feel. I often see politicians speaking, and I'm sure you do more than me. But to see them how they speak in Bled, they speak comfortably. They speak, they feel like they can see things that they normally wouldn't say in their homeland, and they feel, maybe it's because it's after summer, so just after a beautiful vacation, people feel better, so they say, you know what, I'm going to say it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to step further. At the end of the day, this is my job. And so I really think you should capitalize on that. Because one thing we need to change, and we were just talking about it yesterday with my wonderful group of, co-panelists, especially with Maja, we need to stop talking. We need to really change the face of talking and action consequences. I like the fact that we're sitting down and we started with a state secretary who said, we are investing, because this is like, I'm speaking actions. So, especially in Europe, well, Luís is lucky because he also has the hat of dealing with one of the most beautiful countries in the world,
and
Slovenia.
You love him too.
No, well, I love him first. I love him first. So, that's...
Oh my gosh.
Of course, but because you've never been to Portugal. That's why, No, I'm joking. The thing is that we really need to make sure that whatever we're saying in these conferences, whatever we're achieving every time we bring people together, whether it's physical, whether it's local, regional, it's global, streamed, so it should reach everybody. It really not only leaves a mark and people say, oh, that was a good conference, that was a good speaker, but also motivates people to act. And in order for us to do that, as was mentioned earlier, we really need to be completely together. The thing which is really important about labor shortage, and I'm going to get to you on that, is that we really need to make sure that we're acting together. We're not speaking to the European Commission, to the European interlocutors. We're speaking with them. It means they need to come to us and understand fully. And if they don't understand, we're going to insist until they do. Because it's impossible that in the European institutions, tourism is still a small unit in XYZ, blah, 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 and tourism. It's impossible. Because tourism, we keep on saying it's a horizontal sector, it's a large sector, it includes a lot. Tourism is much more than what we've been communicating via our data. Because if we pile up all the other aggregated sector, let's talk cruises, for example. We got the whole shipping industry related to it. And it's because of tourism. If there's no tourism, there's no ships being built, there's no jobs being given. And I don't want to get into the element of are cruises good or not. I'm just talking about industries. And industries have, this industry in particular, the tourism industry, has something which is completely different from everyone else. It's a human-based industry. With no people, there's no tourism. And I'm not just talking about the tourists and the workers, it's the people. It's when you come and somebody communicates to you something about their own country. So, to go back to your question, what are we supposed to do? There's not one single recipe, but there needs to be a dramatic change of perspective. We've been looking at things in the wrong way for too long. I do not personally like when people say we recovered the numbers of 2019, or maybe we've exceeded, because I always respond by saying, were the numbers of 2019 the right numbers? Because let's not forget that when we ended 2019, a lot of people, especially in cities, were hating tourism. So that we have to go back to that and go back to that challenge to understand that we need to motivate people.
I agree. Let me just, I want to pick up on I'm sorry. You don't know me yet, but I love you too. All right, so I have refused, for the most part, to using the word recovery. Because we should not, as a tourism industry, strive to recover to 2019. This is our opportunity to reimagine how travel can truly impact, in a very positive way, communities, neighborhoods, job development, you name it. So I just wanted to, it's not about recovery. It's about reimagining. Sorry.
Recreation.
So we need to, when I say we need to motivate people, when we're speaking, first of all, we need to look to the younger ones. We are obliged to do that, but we need to motivate them, because tourism is the only industry, the only job opportunity that allows them to proudly represent, receive, communicate, and showcase the beauty of their own country, beauty of themselves as well. Let it be a small village, let it be the capital of the country.
Great. And now to Ms. Bulc. Well, you also deal with young people, young talents. You were in the European Commission. Well, what went wrong years ago that tourism hasn't got, let's say, a proper place? That's one question. The second one is, well, because you were in charge of transport in Europe, how do you see the current situation, which was mentioned by Mr. Drésin, the really fantastic problem of air travel, and then travel also within Europe in this new situation in general?
Well, thank you very much. The fact that I've been invited to this panel is very encouraging, because we've heard today a lot about people, customers, innovations, services. I haven't seen anybody speaking about infrastructure, and which is the basics of everything. I mean, how are you going to travel without infrastructure? How are you going to even connect without infrastructure, being transport or digital, or now we're talking a lot about energy. So I would very much invite tourist sector to be more horizontal. I haven't heard about any emergency big meeting between health, tourism, transport, economy, when the COVID started. Nobody took an action and really bring an attention to the significance of the political actions that follow the COVID announcements. We are in a political crisis, my dear friends. We have a climate change. That's a natural process. Yes, people have speeded up the climate change to the point that it's really hard to readjust. But that's not a crisis. That's a long-lasting 60,000 years process. We're talking about energy. We're not in energy crisis. There is enough energy everywhere. We are in a political energy crisis because there's been a lot of intermediates who are making huge money with this political situation. But we are actually in a crisis of vision, in a crisis what to do with this planet. And our Western civilization is stuck with some old paradigms who we try to defend instead of reinvent ourselves and be a contributing factor to the development of the planet as a whole. Where is the vision that the tourism can follow? Where is the something that will unite us and bring us together at tables and discuss really what we want to do with humanity on this planet? Because we're becoming a pretty significant destructive force. So what has to do with the transport? A lot. Because the crisis that politicians created and used transport as a tool to impose fear and manipulation was unbelievable. Aviation, we have a single European skies. We have all contracts that we signed, all member states, we work together. We have systems that support a single aviation market. It completely failed from 1 hour to another. After midnight, we forgot about that. Where were you as stakeholders of single European skies? In order to defeat something we've been fighting for the last 30 years. It just went down the drain with one statement. Fragmented approach to crisis, whatever we name it, crisis means opportunity, right? In Chinese character. This is the time when we see the collective working. This is the time to use the tools that we created in order to address in a robust way the challenges that we're facing. And I haven't seen any of that. So it's my clear invitation that we actually work much better as an ecosystem, that we understand these horizontal structures, and that tourism becomes one of the key strategic horizontal components that can bring these things together. Health, transport, energy, digital. We're going to see more and more cyber tourism. I haven't heard a word about it. A little bit about reading instead of visiting. But the cyber tourism is getting bigger and bigger because of these special new conditions that a health crisis created. We saw, especially in Asia, where you saw the biggest drop in tourism, we saw an incredible increase in digital cyber tourism. It's fascinating. So if we want to really drive a change, we really have to be present with the sincere needs that people are ready to pay for if you address them. And transport will also play an important role. Let's say regionally. Let me go back, but I had to put a bigger picture in order to make a point. Regionally, it was typical in Europe. All of a sudden, railways, road transport started to play a huge role. And all of a sudden, countries are waking up to something that the EU was trying to do since the beginning. Single European transport area. Connect countries with high-speed trains, with night trains. It was a joke. We couldn't get politicians on board on the local levels to really support something like that. And now all of a sudden you want to get it overnight? It takes 30 years to develop projects like that. It cannot happen overnight. So can we think strategically? And aviation-wise, aviation is the only currently connecting point for global tourism. And if we don't work together on the level of UN, and that's why we have ICAO, we have a UN chapter that deals with global aviation issues, and we haven't used it. So yes, transport has to be present at every single discussion that tourism has in order for you to be resilient and to be really ready for all the changes we're today discussing.
And here it is in your person, but one more question to you. Because we also look for a solution. You said that it was a political crisis.
It still is.
It is.
Yeah. We're a funny country of, let's say, it's called speed democracy. You know, it occurred in Slovenia, I think 4 times in last 2 decades that a political party won the election by a landslide, which was actually formed a couple of months before the election. So if the politics is a problem on a global level, would that Slovenian way be a solution? I mean, how can we change politicians on the global?
No, you don't change them. You change the awareness, because what you're aware you can address. So we need to become aware that no single vertical player can find a solution to complex challenges. And we are facing, and we're going to be facing for the next probably couple of hundreds years, serious challenges, because the whole new wave of changes is happening to the relationship of the planet Earth. So yes, we need to bring on board ecosystem logic, horizontal logic, to collectively decide on things, not singular and then fight. Competition models are gone. There is a time for collaborative models, for participatory modeling, to be really present at the decision-making process. And then you can find the solutions that people will go with. What did we see in this so-called crisis that we've been faced in the last couple of years? We see a complete mistrust in people. How are you going to then count on customers to trust you if overall political atmosphere is don't trust people, they have no clue, we will decide about everything? Trust people that they will act responsibly, give them a chance, and then the same applies to tourism. And I see this big change happening in all sectors, so it's not a criticism, it's an invitation. Invitation to really keep walking this path and to create collaborative modeling, decide on a basis of participatory decision-making processes. And then you will see, we will transform together. We will see the change that we are dreaming about, yeah? Because that's the only way to do it. No singular entity can do it on its own.
Walking is a great word because it's also a means of transport, and it's very ecologic, so yes. Walk the same way. Well, we also searched, and that's our second topic, how to overcome the crisis, which is here. So it's the climate crisis, and of course the current problems with energy, which will probably be unfortunately more present in the years to come. So how do you see the solutions from your organization's point of view, Mr. Drésin? What can we do in order to overcome the crises which are here and will be even bigger in the time to come?
There are, as Luís explained, there are crises on which you have an impact or you can manage, and others on which you have little to say and little influence. the energy crisis, be it a political one or a real one, and actually for companies it is a real one. For an hotel, the bill at the end of the month or of the year is changing dramatically. It's something we can't manage. So we need to, let's say, choose our battle. And I think that the industry, as Terry and Alessandra said earlier, don't talk about recovery, but we need to make the change. And the target for the industry is to put sustainability at the top priority, if I may say. What is the positive surprise is that the industry as a whole, but also travel agents and tour operators have embraced this issue right after COVID. We could have thought that they would first focus on managing the, surviving, which was a priority, but they want to change things. We are partners of a European project, so even if the Commission is not always very, very active, they still do positive things. And we have 600 companies in Europe who decided to invest time, energy to put sustainability in their business model today, not in the next year, and to do it practically. So getting training, coaches, certification. So the industry needs to choose battle, and I think the one we need to work on immediately is sustainability. The other one on which we have little impact but is very important is the digital revolution and all the perspectives you mentioned. But I think it's also one of the aspects we'll discuss later.
Yes, of course, we're discussing right now. Yeah.
This is really essential for industry, even if we know that travel has been one of the first hit by the digital revolution. We all went to a travel agent and tour operator in 90 to book a travel. Today you do it online. It's still a travel agent, but it's an online travel agent. But let's come back on that.
How will Mr. Dale, the President Biden's Inflation Reduction Act, which is, let's say, a sort of a US version of a green and digital agenda the European Commission has set last year, how will that actually impact your business?
Well, our politicians have a unique way of packaging something around what really, it's not going to directly impact inflation.
So that's what we learned. That's what we learned from the Americans, actually, because it's the same in Europe. We have packages of all kinds.
Okay, so we're in the same bucket when it comes to that. There are good things within the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed, and obviously around climate, those are all very positive things. I just have to say, I am so enamored with our panel here because in my mind, there are so many things going, setting aside your question as our beloved moderator. We are celebrating our 50th anniversary this year at USTOA. And on the plane ride over yesterday, and I tend to do my best thinking when I'm on a plane. I don't know why, but I do. And what I wrote down was searching for vision. And my colleague here nailed it when, regrettably, the vision certainly that we have lacking in the US, and I won't try and say whether it's here or other parts of the world, but it's the vision that is lacking. And we, as an industry, have to step up and create and execute and imagine the vision that we need for a sustainable future of travel. So I'm working on that. I don't have the answer. We did our first sustainability summit in Norway 2 months ago, where we spent 3 days with key stakeholders around that topic. But vision is key. And we need a vehicle that we all coalesce around to execute and believe in that vision. But it's not easy. It's not easy. But we shouldn't be intimidated.
Mr. Drésin has a vision.
No, I fully agree. But sometimes we need to wait for the vision. And this is not good. We don't have the time. So I think what is very positive is that you see a lot of initiatives, either in the destinations, here in Slovenia, in travel agents, airlines, airport, name it. We need to help them put that into practice and work on that and develop these initiatives. And it will help maybe to have a vision more quickly. Because if we wait for this vision, I won't say it will be too long or too late, but I mean, we miss some opportunities.
Just a really quick comment.
Yeah.
Please agree with me. I definitely agree with you that we need that. But look, politicians are offering us transhumanization. Do you want to support that? Do you want to support the down of Western civilization? Or you want to support maybe as what I called eco-civilization, something that will bring people on the planet together again from all over the world. It is out there in the air. Just grab it and decide. I mean, which way do you want to go? I certainly am not in favor of transhumanism. And I will encourage you to think in that directions too. And then let's join forces, because there is in the air, it's offering itself.
Let us hear Mr. Frangež, because some say in Slovenia at least, that, well, politicians have vision, but only for the 4 years of the term. So I mean, or even less. But how would you be able to grab this vision as a politician? And when? Because it's...
Well, we are talking today about global tourism. And
but we're talking also about Slovenian tourism.
That I am able to deliver the global vision. But what I am certain about is the Slovenian tourism industry has its own vision. It could be put like it says in the strategy, a bit more, but much, much better. You came to Bled, please visit us more often, because we need you as tour operators to travel the best possible guests to discover Slovenia. And it's not only Bled, it's also Ljubljana, the coast, the Prekmurje, all the possible experiences you can enjoy in Slovenia. I'm in my seat for 3 months now, and I'm sorry that maybe I still look at the tourism as a tourist. And you know what is the most precious thing, and it's a wisdom from my wife, actually. Why Why it is important to travel, to spend every weekend going somewhere. You know why? Because this is the best possible way to create memories for my family, for my children, about their happy childhood that will reflect the better future for us all. But, okay, to be concrete, what was already said in the presentations, I believe that this is quite a good roadmap. What we need, what we face in the Slovenian industry, let's say. Okay, first of all, and it's a global phenomenon, the lack of people. Why we came here? Because we didn't cherish them enough. Because we didn't pay cooks, waiters, cleaners enough that we show not only that they deserve a better pay, but they deserve human dignity, Mr. Araujo was talking about. That was a structural problem in the industry. I'm very happy to see today the section of hospitality of our entrepreneur trade union, as well as people from our tourism and hospitality trade union, and I'm pretty sure that, chambers, that people from the trade union are also here. In September, you are stepping into an enormously important process, discussing what can we do to pay people more, to show that we cherish their work, because, as we said, People are the ones that bring the quality, the service, that people are tourism. More than 30 years ago, Slovenia had a promotional video called My Land. And the saying of that campaign was, tourism, we the people are the tourism.
We the people is actually the American Constitution,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
Tourism is people. Okay.
The connectivity, just to finish very briefly, we have an enormous problem in Slovenia. Mrs. Bulc is full aware of that, with the connectivity with major European airport hubs. It is impossible to travel to Slovenia, and you all experienced this in previous days. This is a market failure, okay? And in order for us to be able to use business opportunities we have in this sector, we have to fill in this gap. How? With a strong intervention of the state and possibly the European Commission.
Don't forget the railways.
It's political failure, let's face it, because the planning of the transport infrastructure was opposing.
Okay, I wouldn't emphasize market too much and blame all on the politicians, because, sorry, the current effects we face now are also the failure of the market. Excuse me. Why? Because our power plants still produce electricity, for example, in nuclear power plant Krško for 45 euros. On Drava River, there is a production cost of 27 euros. On spot in France last week, the cost was 1,000 euros. And our businesses, our hotels, our spas and wellnesses are paying these prices today. Why I am leaving early is because of the Committee on Economic Affairs in the National Parliament discussing our law, how to help the economy to prevent this before the regulation we need, and what our tourism as hospitality chamber demands, as well as other parts of economy. Because this huge gap of prices in energy, somebody is putting them into their pockets. And why we need strong intervention? Because our small and medium and large companies demand this in order to survive these difficult times in the tourism industry as well as others. And not to mention, when we are talking about the people in the industry, Maja PAK is leading a splendid campaign of promotions of the work in this industry. It's a nice work, it's hard work, it's dealing with people, but because it's about dealing with people, it's a nice profession.
And it's a long way to go, because we're still in the beginning, fixing, let's say, the approach, fixing the connectivity when it comes to airlines. Don't forget the railways, which were mainly built by the old Austrians here many years ago. So that's also one of the failures we face. So Slovenia is still, let's say, a building place. But Ms. Priante, we haven't heard a lot from you in last minutes. But we're now speaking about green transition and digital, and of course the visions for tomorrow and after tomorrow. Where to grab these visions? How we could actually save the planet with the help of tourism?
Tourism is a major drive for all of this, exactly for all the reasons that we pointed out here. And my answer would be that the UNWTO has that vision. Mm-hmm. The UNWTO is the global platform, not only for member states, for the industry, but also for the non-members. We are the only UN agency specialized in tourism. And Violeta, I'm sorry, but I'm going to, when you mentioned, you should talk to, we did. From the very first moment, we sat down with everyone, all our sister agencies. The Global Tourism Crisis Committee was exactly that. We sat everybody down virtually, obviously, because we had that. And we called everybody, but you know what? Everybody was very busy correctly with their own national problems, with the shock, with everything. So I'm going to go back to answering your question. We have a politician here, once again, who's being very concrete. We have to stop thinking about the bigger picture if we're not sure that we're able to follow up once we have that vision. For me, visions are interesting, but also the way we implement this vision is far more interesting. So normally, what I do, for example, when I prepare for things and stuff, I normally prepare the structure because I know that whatever happens, I have the plan A, plan B, plan C. What I still see missing here is that we're still talking in like separate compartments. We're talking better, definitely, but we're still talking separate compartments. We might come up with a vision, but when it comes to implementing the vision, each one goes regional, local, each one has his own problems. Of course, each one has to respond to his own challenges. There's a lot of associations. Each association demands the politician something. You have the tour guys that want this. You have the tour operators that want that. You have the guys. So, and you need to find the synthesis. Because we talk crisis, let's use another Greek word. Let's talk synthesis. How do we bring this together? Now, I think obviously there's no general official recipe, but I think we said some very important things today that we need to carry forward, which is we definitely need to be far more inclusive when we want to do something. We need to talk to everyone. We wake up in the morning and we have a great idea. Probably the most difficult human thing to do is to share that idea with someone. First of all, you think, oh, he's going to steal my idea. Second thing is, no, maybe he's going to criticize whatever. No, actually, let's put things on the table and let's ask for everybody's contribution. Something good is going to come out of it. Let's do it with generosity. Let's do it with vision. Let's do it with a plan. Every plan has time indicated, list of actions, and KPIs. We're talking about connectivity, increasing connectivity, and definitely. I mean, I love coming to Slovenia because I drive from Italy, but because I'm Italian, so I enjoy that part of, driving, and I encourage everyone to do that. Slow tourism, looking around, whatever.
Railway is even better.
Railway, I agree with you. I do a lot of things on the trains, but riding, concentrating what you do on the plane, for example. But for example, you were mentioning, definitely, I want to come to Ljubljana more often from Madrid with the flight. So that's going to be a challenge that we give you from UNWTO for you to be able to reopen that direct flight. But then my question is, how many people do you want in Slovenia? It's not about just saying, I want Slovenia to be hyper-connected, because then there's going to be a moment where you're going to have lots of people and your Slovenian people are going to say, that's too much. What is this? It's completely disorganized. So we have to change.
It's a long way.
Yes. Yeah. That's why you're very lucky, because you are in a country where you have a structure that is going to do you that planning. So you have to understand, as a destination, you are the example. Each destination has to understand, evaluate, plan, and say, these are my priorities. Mountains, rural tourism, and the lakes. The rest, I'm going to put a little bit on the side. Then, how many people can I handle considering all the costs that I have? This much. And this is how you plan accordingly, and then you execute the plan, you implement it, and then 2 years later, you see what you're doing. Green transition. Slovenia was doing green when nobody knew what green was.
Even Slovenia, where it is.
Yes. I was telling Maja yesterday, you've done it too early, because, this would have been the right time to do it, because everyone would have listened to you. But you guys have the advantage that you know how to do it for real. And your people follow you. They understand we tell them One Plastic Initiative, they understand it immediately, they jump on it. You know what I'm saying? So use that position to be in a leading role. Use the platforms, the multilateral platforms, to show your colleagues around the world how you do it. Hold their hands and design something with them. We are not offering you the only solution, but we're offering you the platform. The UNWTO is at your disposal. And Violeta, I'm going to give you a task now. Sorry, Igor.
Just do it.
I told you I was going to be
I'm ready.
you come from the European institutions. And as my colleague very generously reminded, I'm the only one coming from, my background who managed to bring the UNWTO into a dialogue with the European institutions. Adina Valian was the first person that I met, and I sat down with her, and I told her, even before tourism was being assigned, I told her, travel is tourism. Take tourism with you. I told her, do this change in the beginning. And then no, once again it went back there. So how help us, as Zorica was mentioning before, how do we make tourism more with a greater dignity, more heard at a European level, so that these member states don't need to struggle with regional programs, PON, PNRR, supports, whatever, at a regional level, at an association level, to get a small chunk of money? How do we make that discourse at a European level really relevant?
Okay, couple of very concrete
Violeta,
answers.
Can I just excuse myself? Violeta, Terry, Alessandra.
Yeah, you heard the bell. We were in contact with the local priest. That's the reminder that he has to go.
So, welcome in Slovenia. Come back. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I'll be
Mr.
very quick.
Frangež?
Couple of very concrete projects that are going on that tourism can potentially support. First of all, single ticketing and integrated ticketing. This is very much in favor of tourism. And you need to work together with the transport to get it done. Second one, because it's obstacles on the... They do.
No, they don't. I'm telling you, they don't see us.
It's a local challenge because local interests are prevailing over the integrated interests. But that's where we need to work together. The second one, urban aviation space is one of huge potentials. Europe has already all the regulation in place. It has all the implementing rules in place. This will be a game changer in tourism. Yeah? So you can imagine that you don't need physical infrastructure anymore in order to do experiential tourism. So just a thought. Work with them, because by 2030 this will be possible. The third one is single border controls. I mean, we have it with the US with in a couple of cross-border points, but this has to continue. This is very important. It's a smooth travel. It brings the global international tourists to the single destinations in a much smoother way. Tourism was pushed from transport under the European single market. So that's what it is, because it is recognized as an economical driver. If you want to be more than an economical driver, then again, you have to fight through your local politicians, prime ministers, ministers, to give the proper placement on the EU level. EU is a project, it's not a country. Let's not forget. It's a direct result of the agreements that member states, prime ministers, ministers make. And EU can do only what the Council and the European Parliament gives the responsibility for. So maybe you need to knock on more doors at the same time, especially on the prime minister's doors and the doors of the local ministers.
Yeah, but Violeta, we need help. It's not about just you're once again, you're doing the Brussels thing, which is you drop it back on tourism. Brussels needs to understand what tourism is. Until Brussels makes that awareness move, nothing is going to change.
Brussels are member states.
No, they're not. Because the moment that commissioners sit and have their own structures, they completely lose that sense of, I have to report back to the member state, and they leave the member states fighting for money.
Let's talk about that later, but Commission has no power to implement new changes.
But you have the power to recognize it.
That it is.
That you have power to recognize it.
But you know who gives them the strength?
Okay. Okay.
Terry, Terry, do you agree, Terry, that there is love in Slovenia?
That there is definitely love.
I love him very much.
I love this kind of dialogue that our beloved moderator created, because we should be able to have this kind of...
Don't blame me for everything.
We should be able to have this conversation. So, everyone in the room, do you have too much tourism in Slovenia? Raise your hand.
Yeah, in some parts, in the capital of Ljubljana.
Okay. Our moderator and one hand went up in the back. So, this is the opportunity for you in this room today.
because different regions around the world, high volume versus high value. So you're in a position to identify what's the appropriate best fit for your country as far as the visitor. And that's what you want to target. And it's not an easy exercise to go through, but I think that I like to say we have a responsibility. All of us in the travel industry, when it comes to sustainability, we have a responsibility in making sure that we manage, as opposed to market, what travel can do in a positive way for our local economy and our neighborhoods and the people who call this place home. So high value versus high volume, and let's approach it from a responsible perspective. That's it.
Yeah, I can't agree more with you. The perspective of the companies is also important. I mean, talking about infrastructure states and destination, but this is an industry which has been price-driven for very long, and the margins of the companies are very low, and this has a cost on the quality of the service. When we say, and it's not blaming hotels, because we as travel agents and tour operators, we have also an issue with labor shortage. So if you don't pay for the service you get, then you can pay the people decently. That's where we need to focus on the quality, so value, as you mentioned, Terry, and not focus only on the price. And quality means certainly reducing in some places the impact of the number of tourism. To some extent, we have seen in COVID that under-tourism was a bad thing. I mean, we were talking about over-tourism in the past years, but under-tourism has been a new word for some months. But in a way, it opened a sort of refreshing view on what do we need as a destination. Venice today, there is this temptation, and maybe this is for good, to organize and control the number of visitors on the daily basis. The decision is not yet taken, if I'm okay. It's a dramatic change, but it's maybe a change that needs to be taken in some places. And I agree with you, Terry, this is the right momentum today to think about those new ways of organized tourism. Because otherwise we'll have what we had in the French press a few days ago, philosophers telling that we need to ban tourism.
Not Mr. Žižek.
Not Mr. Žižek. No. But so we go, of course, it was a bit more moderate in terms of content, but we have a risk. And we don't have to take this risk, and we have the chance, and we need to prepare the future in that with that in mind to make this business profitable for everyone.
Great. Let us qualify for the lunch buffet by opening the discussion also to the audience. We have two ladies with two microphones, so if you would like to join the conversation or with your ideas, with your vision, with your question to our panelists, you're free to do it. We have a lot of national sports, but asking questions is not one of them. But I see a hand.
Thank you very much. My name is also Igor, but not Belgant, but Urošević. It's harder to pronunciate, and I wish it would be only 3 letters, but it's not. So I would like to break the ice, but first of all, I will represent myself. I'm coming from Slovenian National Youth Hostel Organization, and I'm working in tourism for over 20 years. So I would like to refer to yesterday's speech of respected President of Ukraine, who, among everything, mentioned 2 things. First was that we need to support and empower ordinary Russians to step up against the war. And the second was about banning the tourism visas for Russian citizens. But even if it might be unpopular to disagree with respected President, all my professional, let's say, experiences led me to some conclusions which I would like to share with you. And of course, I would ask panelists to or confirm or or to challenge them. But if we ban visas for regular, ordinary tourists from Russia, I believe it is direct support in economical and in political way to Russian authorities. And because we are all from the tourism field, it will be much easier first to understand what is the economical support for Russian authorities. We all know that tourism is the only export where VAT stays in the country. So if we'll keep Russian tourists to visit Russian places instead of coming to Bled, they will not eat Slovenian bread with Slovenian butter, with Slovenian cheese and ham, and use the Slovenian transport, but rather they will use the Russian one. So the VAT, among all others, VAT would not be possible to spend, for example, for helping people in the energy crisis or to support refugees for Ukraine, but could be spent, for example, for weapons and for munitions to continue the war in Ukraine. So I think if we understand that it could lead to financial support, I also see that there is a big political support to Russian authorities. Why? Because if we speak, if we want to listen President Zelensky and follow his wish that we empower Russian people to speak against the war, first of all, we must reach them. And if we all know that the European Union banned almost all Russian information in Europe, and trust me, Russia is not more democratic than the European Union, and they did the same with information from our side. So ordinary Russian citizens are not able to receive our news, and I think that tourism is the only and the best way to get them informed, and when they come back to Russia, they could discuss about it openly and bring another view. So in my way, we should, this sanction is, of course, helping the Russian economy and destroying our economy. And I come to the question and basically the request. So if the panelists are willing to discuss about it and maybe to support these conclusions, or to see the other way and say that I'm wrong, what I would also accept. Thank you very much.
Not about right and wrong. It's what we think, how we comment. Any comments in the panel, Ms. Priante? Any?
Oh. I'm not ready with a comment. I cannot refrain but thanking you for giving this peace of mind. We have been challenged about a few days ago as a UNWTO on how to respond to this request for the elimination of visa for a tourism purpose in traveling. And we're at the moment, which is not a diplomatic answer, but it's true, we are consulting at the UN level, because obviously being a UN agency, we cannot, as well, we're not responsible for visa and stuff. We can just do whether communication or advocacy or, that type of, so we are shaping our position. But I am personally very grateful for your point of view, to which I personally, it's a very personal position, fully agree. Because we need to take many things into consideration. And the unfortunate thing, I said before, tourism is the industry of people. And I think that in a way we should be able to preserve tourism from potential excessive politicization, but I do not have neither the tools nor the, let's say, technical knowledge to be able to address such an important question directly. I think your question, is a very, decent question that many people are probably asking themselves and they're not saying, as much as when in the beginning we as UNWTO listened as the only UN agency to the requests of many member states, including Ukraine, and we called upon an extraordinary executive council, which then called upon an extraordinary general assembly. We were the only UN agency who actually suspended the membership of the Russian Federation. Yes, on the same day they then withdrew, because of course they needed to take the scene. So it was very important for them to do that. But this is to tell you how much we took that seriously and how much we are at the moment supporting the Ukrainian sort of tourism structure to remain alive and to stay steady, because it's incredibly difficult for them at this moment. But I remember at the time when we started, I personally had many member states that confidentially told me, we're not very happy with this, because Russia is and was a big source of income in terms of the number of tourists. One of them being Italy. Yeah?
Okay, Mr. Dessa.
Obviously, this is not a position of our organization on this matter, because we did not debate, and I think it's not the role of a non-profit organization to have such a political statement. I've said I agree with Alessandra and with your position, with your comments, for three reasons. First, invading Ukraine was not a decision of the population; it was the decision of the head of state. I don't say that they are not supporting it, but at least it's not their primary choice. So, Mr. or Mrs. XYZ maybe don't have to suffer exaggerately about from this decision. Second, Russians are traveling. They are in Turkey. They are in other destinations than Europe. So if there is a ban, they will go somewhere else. Third, let's think about what travel is about and tourism. We mentioned very rapidly about the image, about changing, but when you travel, you meet people, you meet another culture, there is an exchange, and if you block people, if you force them to stay in their own country, they just hear the same noise, the same music, and also maybe it's interesting for us to listen to what they have to say as citizens. So I would say beyond the economic impact, which I fully agree, there is this ethical, political dimension that we need to keep in mind. But this is a very personal view.
So I would just say, for 50 years, we have been all about open borders, that any U.S. traveler should be able to go to any country that he or she chooses to experience. And I feel the same for your Russian citizens. This would not be something that we would support. Travel is a bridge, and we need to celebrate that.
Yep.
Maybe just one quick comment to all this. I think we need to be aware that what is happening right now, and we think that the whole world is in this framework of political constellation, we need to be aware that it's only 1/3 of the world. That the 2/3 of the world, as colleague mentioned, is not affected by the Ukraine crisis. So here
not yet.
Not yet. Here we would need by far more political strength, and maybe it's an opportunity to discuss how to act in the cases like this whenever the war zone reappears in whichever part of the world. This is something that maybe UN could have a discussion on, and I invite my colleague that maybe tourism can be the one who can foster this kind of discussion. So this perspective is very valid, and what you all said, it's a very valid comment. So the one that really suffers right now in this situation is Euro.
Okay, thank you very much. Because his name was Igor, and so is mine, you may know that the name Igor actually comes from Kiev and surroundings. The Ukrainian version is Ihor, but it's actually, no, it's true, and it was actually, but it came from Sweden with the Vikings who traveled from Sweden and formed then a state around Kiev that was in the 9th or 10th century. So it was actually, it's a name which came with tourists. The original
Only our beloved moderator could make that bridge.
Yeah.
Perfect.
The original name was Ingvar. So yeah, And the other one was Oleg, which is also Ukrainian or in the Russian name, and it comes from Ule. So, okay, the two names from tourists. Any other question? Any other hand?
Igor, I'm sorry, can I ask the person, the only hand that I saw regarding not happy about having many tourists to make a comment?
Okay, yeah.
Had enough. Yeah.
That is bold.
Yeah.
Yeah, the gentleman.
I don't know what's her name?
Igor. My name is Stanislav Raščan. I'm from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Slovenia, former deputy minister, and in 2 days I will be Slovenian ambassador to Bratislava. Seeing, so many tourists in, of course, downtowns of Bratislava, where is located my embassy, our Slovenian embassy, and also so many tourists in downtown Ljubljana in the peak of the season, and coming recently from Ohrid Lake just yesterday. I was in Ohrid in northern Macedonia, where now in the peak of the season there are also many tourists. I would say that, and this was my first reaction, that in this Lake Bled, Lake Ohrid, capitals and so on, maybe there are too many tourists already, and we need to bring them also to other parts of Slovenia, like to my home Prekmurje. Thank you so much.
Which is really a nice region. That's actually the only part of Slovenia which doesn't have high mountains, and so it's really unique. So thank you very much, Mr. Raščan. Yes, we have another question by the lady here.
I'm so sorry. Can I quickly react?
Oh yes, of course. Yeah.
Sorry, no, because he was my choice. So it's
Sorry.
Well, first of all, I don't know, Luís. Something, everything happens for a purpose. This is one of our challenges. This is one of our challenges. He's a diplomat. He's going to represent Slovenia in Bratislava, and this is the way he's thinking. And Luís just was telling us yesterday he had a similar experience with a high-level official from Brussels who thinks exactly the same about Portugal. Too many tourists in Portugal. Now and he is speaking from the perspective of the tourist, but he's going to keep this in mind. So this is a challenge because we have to understand one thing. We're all humans. I agree with you. We're very destructive, and definitely something needs to change. But what happened with pandemic, we were brought into a situation of complete halt, and complete halt, besides obviously the reasons and the sickness, which was very sad and difficult for many, many of us, brings us to a total change in the way we feel, we think, we eat, we sleep. Once we touch upon that well-being, we are like, okay, I want this for the rest of my life. And we immediately forgot, because how many people did you talk to that says, I went to, I don't know, I'm going to mention my country just because it's very touristic, but, I went to Roma, so beautiful. I was going around, the Colosseum was empty, amazing. When that thing becomes a value, and I think that obviously when you see it surrounded by people, you're going to stand in a queue, it's hot, and even though you have your ticket, your water and everything, obviously you're going to feel disturbed. So the challenge is now is precisely, we have to tackle the human side by being very inclusive in the way not only we communicate, but we make people re-enjoy the feeling that we're talking about, meeting people, being with people, the Madeira feeling. Luís, we were almost there, when people with suitcases, can I help you and stuff. Now, we have to get that back, and that's why we're going to be one of the biggest challenges that we have, because we don't know how we evolved, because we were all isolated and we were not communicating. So first thing we need to do is get back into that state of mind of that vision, I think that is an area where I would want to place the vision. And sorry, just to get back to that, but because we somehow need to be concrete, because sooner or later all these stakeholders are going to have to face the groups of citizens who are going to put things on their balconies saying no more trolleys, or no more tourists. So that's it. Thank you very much, by the way, and good luck. Congratulations on your mission.
Okay, thank you.
I think what Stanislas? Yeah, Stan mentioned is one aspect of what we raised with the sustainability. Destination management of flow is essential, and when we're sustainability is not about it's not only about putting solar panel on the roof of the hotels, but also help people to go at another time, at another place, and try to discover a destination in a different way, and this is very important. Now, you may say I will advocate for my own industry, but going with a tour operator help, and for Terry, help also to organize the flow of tourists, because they know when people are going to certain destination, they know the capacity of the destination. They organize with this destination some activities, and they can help destination to have a year-round activity, for instance, and design the proper offer for their customers. Of course, you can do it on your own, and we all do it when we travel to the next country, but there's an added value also with working with travel advisors and look at tourism in another perspective, just as consumption. And that's the image that we need to bring back in the society. Tourism is important for the business of the economy, but it's also quality, or what we said just before, quality and meeting people and sharing. I think sharing is a key.
Great. Before we go to the last question, I have one. For a Slovenian ambassador in Slovakia, 25 years ago, it would be a challenge to say, well, I'm the Slovenian ambassador to Slovakia, and people in Europe and the States would say, well, Slovenia, Slovakia, it's the same. How come? I mean, now it's different because people really know Slovenia and Slovakia, and they know that two different countries. They know that they have both really fantastic tourism and so on. And we even beat Slovakia in ice hockey, which was not imaginable some years ago. So it's okay. And I think that Mr. Raščan comes from Prekmurje. There is a nice tower, and you can, in good days, you can see Slovakia from the Vinarium Tower. Although we don't share a border, so visit Prekmurje. Last question from the lady, if she didn't give up. No. So.
It works? Yeah. I'm just going to step here that you can all see me. I'm from Association of Slovenian Tourist Guides. My name is Tina Hrast, and this is the oldest association in Slovenia. It will be 35 years old next year, which is quite an accomplishment.
The organization?
Yes, the organization. Okay. I'm a little bit older than 35. But anyway, yeah, I also have an incoming tourist agency. And it was interesting to listening to all of you. I'm actually very grateful that we have also female representatives here, very passionate ones. And I so agree with you, what you started with when you said that we should listen each other and we should communicate. And but before I address this, I want to say something about tourism. Okay, I'm all about organized tourism because it all comes back to locals, the insights that we know. So it would be so much better for tourism in general if everyone would travel in organized way, what you were talking about. So operators, tourist agencies, locals, we know what is best, and we would know how to advise to our guests that are actually future travelers to our country, where to go, what is the best, what to expect, and they would come with better expectations, you know, because expectations are the key, how to make your guests happy or unhappy. They come with certain expectations, and you have to meet these expectations. So I have been working as a travel director or tour manager, if you prefer, for 17 years, so I know a little bit something about guests and how they behave, and you all have to make them happy at the end of the day, right? So imagine that you have 40 people sitting in a coach, and now this is organized, right? We do things together. I tell them where we go together, then they do have free time, of course. This is not like military situation. It's still, you know, free world, hopefully, for a long time. And, you know, when it comes to luggage service, we do it organized. You know, it's not traffic jam in the elevator. We do everything, you know, by the insights and by the knowledge of us, tourist experts. So now put these 40 passengers from a coach in individual cars, or even worse, this vans they're traveling around, and then we see the images that we see, you know, on our national TV, which you're representing, Mr. Igor, traffic jams at Vršić Mountain Pass and so on, and people complaining about it because it was not organized. That's why we need organized tourism. That's when we step in, you and I'm in interaction with guests. And now back to communication. We still hope, and we really hope, that we will be, you know, sitting at the same table with the Association of Slovenian Tourist Agencies, which Mr. Knaus is representing here. As I said, I'm from Slovenian Association of Tourist Guides. We're so important, and a lot of you know this here. We are this interaction. We are this direct interaction with guests, and we know what is going on the road. We can hear, you know, the complaints or good things, you know, about, I don't know, certain restaurant, certain service, and so on. So please, Maja Pak, next time when we send you a letter, do hear us out. That's why we're here. We want to do things better for this country and Europe in general. Thank you so much.
Okay. That was bold. And I like the surname. Hrast means oak. That's the national tree of Styria, which is a neighboring region to Prekmurje, where Mr. Raščan comes from. So, Hrast, oak. Well, any comment on that? No? You can surely discuss it with Ms. Pak, Ms. Hrast, afterwards at lunch, because we have finally qualified for the lunch buffet due to a lively discussion and bold statements by the panelists. Thank you very much. Another applause. And of course, we had some interaction, and we even had questions from the audience, which is also great. Unique 3 questions in 10 minutes. It's sort of a Slovenian record.
You know what? I just have to follow up on what our friend, colleague here said. First of all, you're ambassadors for all of us, and you are key. We know that. But I don't know if you're familiar with Saturday Night Live, but in New York City, in the States, SNL, Saturday Night Live, they did a skit about one of my members, Perillo Tours, who's iconic in Italy. And basically, Adam Sandler said, if you're unhappy before you come on our tour, you're going to be unhappy when you leave our tour. And you know what? You have the best intentions, and you do everything you can, and we appreciate that. So.
Thank you very much. We know that Americans always love to have the last word, which is okay. So, I just say, God bless us all, and especially America. So thank you very much, and enjoy the lunch at the terrace. Bye. Okay.